You're listening to the podcast for all of the news, notes, and breakdowns for your Ohio State Buckeyes. This is Sons of the Shoe with Nick Wilson and Spencer German.
Hey guys, Nick Wilson, Spencer German back. It is Sons of the Shoe. We are in between weeks on spring practices. Spring practices returning next week. And so what we have to talk about today is quite a lot about what we heard from Chip Kelly late last week. Some of the changes in college football, whether they're actually good for college athletes, and the most gargantuan punter anyone's ever seen. But as we are a relatively new podcast, please make sure to follow the show wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify. Please make sure to follow the show, the free Odyssey app, 923thefan.com. Also, please remember to follow 923 The Fan, the YouTube channel, which you might be watching us on right now. And don't be afraid to leave comments. We love to get your interaction. Even Michigan fans, when Michigan fans do, we very much enjoy that as well. Every comment matters, I always say. But how you doing, Spencer?
I'm good. Very happy to have you back. Not that I mean, listen, I think I did a decent job holding down the fort without you for a couple episodes.
Are you fishing for a compliment? Because
no,
I will give you one.
That is definitely not. I truly was just coming into this to basically just share how grateful I am to have you back alongside me. Because I enjoy hearing myself talk as much as the next radio show host. But it's nice when I can actually have I bounce things off of each other and we can get into a little bit and have have some friendly debates. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm happy to be back. And I will say, I thought it was really interesting. One of the things that came out of last week and then into this week was Chip Kelly's comments about his decision to leave UCLA as the head coach. And, you and I debated previously, why does a man go from UCLA as the head coach to being the offensive coordinator at Ohio State? In fairness, he interviewed for multiple NFL offensive coordinator jobs. It just felt like he was done being the head coach at UCLA. And so while we've debated that, it was interesting to hear Chip Kelly make these comments just in the last couple days here.
Yeah, no, I talked a little bit about some of his comments. He had like a formal press conference and we'll play some of the audio from that here in a second about his decision. But I had a clip about just, him coming here and what the offense is going to look like and how excited he was to make it. It's like having to be a collaborative effort between him and Ryan Day. But I get the sense that he's coming into it sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And, we can read between the lines on some of the things that he says when we play this audio here in a second. But I think it's fair to understand why a guy would come to Ohio State for this type of job anyway, because Ohio State is a premier program in the country. It's a chance to win. It's a chance to, think about we talk about it all the time, right? All the coaches who sort of became reclamation projects with Nick Saban and sort of revived their careers and got head coaching jobs elsewhere. So if Chip Kelly ever wants to go to a bigger program again or do something else, maybe get back to the NFL, this is an obvious great route to take to potentially do that, revive your career in a way at Ohio State. So I can't blame him for that. But I just keep going back to the thing that we talked about before of I think he understood where he was at. He was still on the payroll. He was still going to be back next year. But I think he knew, like, if they didn't put together a winning season this year as they move to the Big Ten and have all this transition, and there's just frankly better teams in the Big Ten that you're going to have to face, and it probably wasn't going to be a very good season for him there. I think he kind of just took the easy exit that was at his disposal and teamed up with a guy. And I don't blame him for it. Like, he's teaming up with Ryan Day, who he's coached with before. They have familiarity with each other. Ryan Day's offense basically based around what Chip Kelly's always done and Chip Kelly's system. So it makes a lot of sense. If you're going to go somewhere, you're going to land softly at a place where you have some comfortability. And I think that's why it makes sense for him. But I keep going back to that thing, like I said.
So I think what always kills me is people just want one answer and one part of an answer, and they just want something nice and tidy, which is what I think Chip Kelly gave the Columbus media. But I've made life-changing moves multiple times in the last 8 years. deciding to leave 92.3 The Fan in 2018 to go to Charlotte. And then, because I was at Knights then, I did it predominantly because I never saw my family and I never saw my wife. Now, did it help that they gave me more money? Yes. Did it help that it was part of the day lineup and that the life in general would be more manageable? 100%. But it was also that first thing. So this idea of, when I came home, did they give me more money? Yes, they did. Was it a more prestigious job? Yes. Was I coming back to a better station than I was leaving? Absolutely. Was it also about moving my family closer to our family? Yeah, that was pretty much the number one reason. But there were 4 other reasons on top of it. But for some reason, we just need the nice and tidy answers that coaches give us. And the truth is, you can't tell me that if Chip Kelly was coming off a 10-win season, he'd be the Ohio State offensive coordinator.
No.
And I think there's a lot of validity to what he said for guys like him, where you might see more guys decide they'd rather be coordinators, whether it's in the NFL or college, than be the head coach at a program that it's harder to win at, like UCLA. That's what made the Bill O'Brien thing so fascinating, is that guy's so Machiavellian. He'd rather be the head coach right now at Boston College than the OC right now at Ohio State and maybe the head coach at UCLA next year. Or USC next year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just been interesting to watch. But I wanted to play, which part of the sound do we have from him talking about the decision to come to Ohio State?
Yeah, so I think this is a perfect place for it, because you talked about just the family factor for you and the happiness of your family and yourself. And that's the segment we have for you here, was just kind of his quote on wanting to be happy as a college coach, which is obviously the career path that he loves. So we'll play this for you here. It's about 30 seconds. We'll react on the other side.
John Lennon, when he was a little kid, that had an assignment of what do you want to be when you grow up, and he said, I want to be happy. And then his teacher said, I don't think you understand the assignment. And his mom said, I don't think you understand life. So I just want to be happy. And I'm really happy coaching a position, really happy to be at this place. It would have taken a special place for me to leave UCLA, because I love those players and I love that coaching staff. But to be here with Ryan, I had a great relationship. I've known Ryan since he was a little kid. So I think a lot of things just fell into place that way.
So I love the John Lennon quote, and I am a sucker for this. Something that popped up when I was listening to this, because I think it's a big part of this. I think the bigger part might be he saw that his time in UCLA was running out, and that either an offensive coordinator job in the NFL or the right offensive coordinator job in college, that was the right opportunity to take for his career. I really do believe that he'll be happier, that there are some people that are just happy as coordinators. And so if this is what that is for Chip Kelly, he just would rather draw up plays, do some recruiting, but he now gets to coach guys again. What I would say is, there's not one archetype. And what's befuddling to me is that now we have head coaches all trying to fit into the CEO role.
Yeah.
And the truth is, there's some coaches who that's not why you hired them. So what's funny is I've seen a lot of, like Ryan Day's trying to morph into the CEO job, right? But what's funny is that we don't have situations where they're like, well, your best thing is you're a great recruiter and you're great at X's and O's. So we're going to or maybe you're a good recruiter, but maybe you're not good at talent evaluating, or maybe you're not good at managing NIL or all this stuff. So that we're just going to make that part of the GM's job. I think it's really, again, so a lot of this is specific to Chip. So we're getting in the weeds. I'm getting in the weeds here. But I just think it's interesting that the only real evolution that we're seeing is these X's and O's guys going to more CEO roles, and we're not seeing a diversity of how coaches, basically building around a coach's strengths, which inevitably force a guy like Chip Kelly to feel like he's got to make this career decision.
I think that's actually really well said, because it feels like that's kind of the shift. And part of the answer, the long answer that Chip kind of gave to in that press conference, in that conversation, was about how you use the term CEO. He used that term. He used that exact same term to kind of define how college football has changed. When you're a head coach now, you are more of a CEO than anything else. And so to your point, like you said it, Ryan Day is kind of trying to embrace that and take the reins of that and pass off the play calling duties. And that's going to be something that Chip now manages. And I do think it's fascinating. Like Ohio State potentially has a chance to be, I don't know if we can say ahead of the curve, because this is basically what Nick Saban's done for years. I mean, Nick Saban was able to basically bring in an offensive coordinator and say, all right, you're handling that side of the ball, I'll take care of the defense. But I guess the difference is you're kind of putting trust in both your coordinators now to actually do the coaching, while you kind of are the czar over the entire football program. So it's an interesting sort of shift. I think this offseason has kind of proven Ohio State's trying to be at the forefront of some of these changes now, and Ryan Day's really embracing them, which I think is important. But you wonder, like, if this, I feel like it is going to happen. Like, I feel like we are going to continue to see trends where coaches who maybe aren't as inclined. Let me put it to you this way. Nick Saban, he's retiring because part of his reason for retiring has to be because the game isn't the way that he came up in, right? Like, it's not the college football that he once knew. And so he's like, this isn't for me anymore. We're seeing other coaches go places because, well, this isn't what I signed up for anymore. I feel like now the chance to do what you signed up for is potentially doing what Chip Kelly just did, going to a school and just being a coordinator where you can focus on coaching and you don't have to think about all that other, in some senses, bullshit that the CEO, head of the program, has to worry about. And I think that that's going to matter to people. So I'm curious to see how much this kind of continues, if Chip Kelly almost starts this trend of guys following in that same light. But I think that could be where we're headed just because of the shifting landscape of college football. And to be clear, that's okay. Like, that's okay if coaches want to do that. Because like we sit here on this podcast every week and say, too bad, so sad. Like, these are coveted jobs. And if you're not willing to adapt, like, that's on you. So I can respect a guy who's like, listen, I just want the coaching part. And if that means I got to go be a coordinator, I'll go be a coordinator.
I'll believe it when Nick Saban is the defensive coordinator at Michigan State. So I think what's interesting is I think there's also another conversation here about being the offensive coordinator at a blue blood, a no BS, an Ohio State, a Texas, a Michigan, although Michigan might not play financially in the same kind of way that you pay at Ohio State, but Alabama, Georgia, all the what is it, top 15 programs, top 12 programs, is that now more advantageous than maybe being a head coach at like the 30th best program? Because what's interesting about that is previously, like, it made absolute sense when Sean Lewis left the head coaching job at Kent State to take the offensive coordinator job at Colorado because he doubled his money. Yeah. But like, I think we're getting to a point where the financial incentive and the financial disparity between being the, again, head coach at the 30th best college football program all of a sudden doesn't seem to be as great between that and the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. And that's, money does talk. Like some of the different answers we've gotten from Saban and Chip Kelly and other guys who are changing profession, changing what they do, being an OC instead of a head coach. Some of this is self-serving bullshit. And so, like, a part of me thinks, like, the money has to be worth it. So I'm assuming Chip Kelly's getting an ass ton of money, but I just think it's interesting that now that this is the way we're now looking at the Ohio State job versus the UCLA head coaching job versus what this would have been 20 years ago.
So what does that mean for the discrepancy that exists between like the haves and the have-nots? Because the idea is NIL is supposed to level the playing field a little bit and give other programs a chance to bring in recruits, and not everyone's going to go to just the top flight schools all the time. But now, like, is this how the haves kind of separate themselves? Is, well, we can afford the best coaches, and so that's going to help us stand out. And we're taking guys that could be head coaches elsewhere, but they don't want to handle all that. So they're going to come be an offensive coordinator for us while we also have a really good head coach on top of it. Do you think that's something that could potentially happen?
So yes, but I think what's interesting is I don't think it's simple as, well, now being the OC at Ohio State's better than being the head coach at Michigan State, right? It depends on each program's financial situation. UCLA now has so many money problems.
Yeah.
I don't know they're a top 30 job anymore. They might be the 50th best job. And so, like, I don't think it's ever going to happen USC to Ohio State. But what'll be interesting is now that UCLA starts having this Big Ten money, and there is going to be an infusion of cash to see if, again, what's so interesting is Pac-12 team going into the Big Ten. All right, does Clemson start stealing the head coach back at Virginia? Does Tony Elliott decide he wants to go back and be the OC at Clemson rather than being a head coach struggling at Virginia? So the question is, I don't know, but I think it's really interesting. I don't buy into the doomsday bullshit. There's too much money floating around. Everyone's going to be fine, and college football is going to be fine. For the second straight year, there was another increase in attendance at college football games.
Yeah.
So, like, the sport's fine, but it is at a fascinating point where there's so much conjecture and there's so many answers to say that, like, I don't know. And by the way, I don't know if it's going to be bad for college football. I'm not for certain that it will be bad. I just know it's going to be different, and that's what makes I think the evolution of college football, as nerve-wracking as it is for college football diehards and OG guys who've loved it since, the AP determined who was going to be the national champion, as nerve-wracking as it is, I think there's also an excitement in that because you just don't know from one year to the next.
So tell me if you want to hear my second question for you, which is a question I asked on last week's episode that I discussed. Do you want to hear it now or do you want to hear it after the break?
I want to hear it after the break. And when we come back, we're going to hear the second question from Spencer and talk about the next big change for college football, that college football is being a little disingenuous with who it really benefits. That's next on Sons of the Shoe. But first, a quick word from our sponsors.